Welcome, everyone, to the Shadow of Comics weekly broadcast. I am your host, The Shadow, coming to you live July 20th, 2026. I hope all our listeners are doing well tonight. This will be a solo episode as my co host, Raven, will be unable to join us this evening. I wanted to talk about something very epic. And last night I got to witness something that was epic, something that was great, something that was generational. Last night I had a screening of Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey. Now, Sir Christopher Nolan is a man that's well known for making absolutely fantastic pieces of art. Just some of the best films ever made. Batman Begins, Memento, The Dark Knight Rises. So I went into this film very curious and very hungry for what he could potentially do with such a ancient and timeless story of Homer's The Odyssey. And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to keep this as spoiler free as possible. This film stars Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Charlize Theron, and just an all-star cast of this film. And what this film is about, it is the story of the king of Ithaca, Odysseus, played by just the thespian Matt Damon. And the story is about his journey after the Trojan War to get back to his kingdom of Ithaca, to get back to his wife Penelope, again played by Anne Hathaway, and the fact that after 20 years of trying to get home, and the movie is told very similar in a Nolan way of not being told very linearly. So you see the struggle of how he got to Troy and the Trojan horse. You get to see his son as a grown man struggling with the conflict of all these suitors who are like, they're almost like people that want to take his father's throne. And you see where he is while these evil men are trying to take over and corrupt the kingdom of Ithaca and take the throne for themselves. And the protection of his mother, Anne Hathaway, Penelope, who is basically just the last line of defense to save Odysseus's kingdom as it is. John Leguizamo plays an excellent role as like a wise old man who knows of Odysseus's great deeds in the Trojan War and tells these stories to his son, guides him along. I don't want to get too much into the meat of the film. I believe this is a film that you should experience yourself. And I will say that this film is the best movie I have seen in the cinemas in a very long time. This film is breathtakingly gorgeous, perfectly cast, exceptionally made, with only very minor flaws that I found in the movie. One being a design of the monster that comes much later on in the film that I don't want to spoil because it would carry some weight with the people who are not familiar with the plot of the film, and they may feel cheated by this. And I would say that the first 10 minutes of this film did kind of, I don't want to say drag, but they felt like it was a lot of setup. But the minute that Odysseus and his men encounter the Cyclops, the film it gripped me. It had me in a way that no movie has in a very, very long time. The the story of this film, the moral. I'm not just talking about the events and the cool monsters and the Greek epics that Nolan has crafted, but the absolute heart of this film, of Zeus's law, which is very prevalent throughout the film, treating others as you would be treated, and the themes of fate and the defiance of the gods, and what our role is in the greater universe, and if our actions do actually lead to greater issues if we choose the wrong things. Nolan plays a high wire act with all of these things, and he pulls it off masterfully, just carrying just an absolute epic that just fires on all cylinders. Elliot Page, is exceptional in this movie in the limited screen time that he has. He has probably the best scene in the movie, in my opinion, in Hades with Odysseus, where Odysseus is kind of confronted with the consequences of all the things that he has done. And I don't want to spoil too much about that scene, but this is really carried by Matt Damon. Everybody else in this movie to me is good, but Matt Damon as Odysseus carries this movie to just another level. He is the heart, the soul, the backbone of this movie. That if he had been just slightly worse, this movie wouldn't be to the level of greatness that it is. And he pushes it to the level of just top tier filmmaking by his performance. He just effortlessly disappears as a thespian actor as he is. He's one of our great actors. Just disappears into this role. And Tom Holland is his son, as I mentioned before. Excellent. You see a conflicted young man. You see a man that's carrying the weight of his father's absence, for lack of a better term. And, this movie to me is not, people have said that it's a movie about treating others as you could be treated, and it is. I have said it's also about the defiance of the gods, and it is, and what our role in the greater universe is. But it's also a movie about hope and about never giving up, and a movie that, in my opinion, just pushes you. You feel everything that Odysseus goes through. When he makes a decision that costs men their lives, you feel it with him. You feel the weight of everything he has done up until the final minutes of the film. Now, I've praised this movie a lot, and I will get into my star ratings, but I do want to address some of they're not controversies. They're a very vocal minority of angry, hateful people who have, for a long time, wanted this movie to fail due to some of the casting choices in this movie, not just of Elliot Page, who he is fantastic in this film, just absolutely incredible. But, the fact that Travis Scott plays a bard, and yes, people can dice it up any way that they want, but they are wanting this movie to fail because there is Black people in this movie, people of color in this movie. And you know what the best part is? It's succeeding in spite of that. It's one of the few times of life imitating art and art imitating life. This film is not just succeeding, it is soaring in spite of the hatred and the anger and the bigotry and the cowardice of a small vocal minority of people. Very small. I'm talking minute. And that makes me have hope. One of the greatest scenes in the film is a scene at the very beginning of the film where you see Odysseus standing amongst the graves of all the men that have died and have been buried on this beach as a result of this 10-year war. And you see the pain in his eyes as Matt Damon delivers it just absolutely, just excellently. You buy every scene that he's in. But the thing that hit me the most is after you experience this really powerful moment of him seeing the graves of all of his men that have died, he proceeds to carry forth and overcome. And Odysseus is a very flawed man. He often spits in the face of fate. He defies the gods when he's told to do specific things, but yet chooses that his way is better if it means saving people. And that, to me, is the definition of challengement. And that is what Nolan excels at. We call it, challenging your characters. The idea that you pit your characters against insurmountable odds, and your characters overcome those odds because they are these ancient myths. And just getting away from the controversy and the very vocal minority. And if you are one of these people, you are the minority. This movie just made back its budget, and it's only the opening weekend. It's going to be successful. It's probably going to win a bunch of awards. It's going to be one of Nolan's most highest rated, beloved films. As of right now, at Rotten Tomatoes, it sits at 97% with critics and audiences, not because it's woke, but because it's a great, excellent piece of art about hope and rising above hatred and rising above anger and rising above your own personal post-traumatic stress disorders as a veteran, which I am not, and I have the utmost respect for those veterans out there. But there is a very clear undertone of rising above trauma in this film. So, overall, folks, I'm going to make this a very brief broadcast. Raven will be back on Thursday to do a spoiler-free review. I do not know what his thoughts on this film were. All I can tell you is my thoughts. And my thoughts are this movie was the definition of a masterpiece. It is the definition of an epic. Please, if you have not seen this film, go see it in IMAX on the biggest screen possible. For me, this movie is a 5-star classic. And I would leave you folks with this. No matter how bad it is out there, no matter how lost we are in the darkness, no matter how lost we are at sea, without a direction, without a clear way home, as we see Odysseus go through in this film, sometimes it's hell trying to get to heaven. This has been the Shadow of Comics podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if you don't know, the Shadow knows.